Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, Haggerty10 on the Twitter handle. I'm joined once again this week by Alison McConnell. Alison, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Tony. Yourself?
I'm very well, Now, Alison, Kyogo Furuhashi, we like him, don't we?
He's I think he's become a talismanic figure for Celtic this season. I think it's been a very seamless introduction. I think he gelled immediately from basically stepping off the plane and walking into that squad at Tynecastle. But I think as soon as he started starting games, I think he made an immediate impression, and I think his performances on the pitch have come also with a general enthusiasm and what comes across as a very bubbly nature of the park. I think he's very firmly endeared himself to the Celtic sport.
Now, the reason I started with that is because there's some kind of narrative, and you'll be reading a lot of people at the minute who've deemed to call Kyogo Furuhashi a cheat, Alison. This is the word that's been bandied around. They're branding him a cheat. Now, I'll be the first to admit and say a couple of times I've saw some histrionics from Kyogo Furuhashi's maybe went down too easily for my liking a couple of times, but it's hardly serial cheating, and I just don't get this framing of a narrative that they would call someone like Kyogo Furuhashi a cheat because you said he seems to be an amiable and infectious character, but he also is a very good footballer, and maybe that has some opposition running scared. I don't know the answer to that, but to label him a cheat's just, I think it's so out of order and so far and wide of the target, it's unreal.
I think it's a very strong word. I think it's quite a serious accusation to level at someone. I think I would agree with you. I think at times he's maybe gone down a bit too easily or made a meal of things. But I think at a certain level of professional football, it is all about trying to get any advantage that you can get. And I think maybe in some leagues it's maybe more encouraged than others. I think maybe just trying to play to an advantage. I think there has been times when he's maybe overcooked it a bit. I'm thinking of the incident though with I think was it John Suter last Thursday night when he maybe pinched him. I think I remember years ago being quite shocked as a naive young reporter. And we done a piece with Henrik Larsson, and he was talking about corner kicks and set pieces in the box, about strikers and defenders doing everything they could for an advantage. And he was talking about people nipping one another. And I remember just being quite stunned by it. It just seems like such a playground thing. But I think it's maybe much more common than what you would realise. And I think obviously these things go on. I don't think they're always entirely visible to the naked eye when you're a distance away, and I think there are also other aspects of games that go on. I think in cricket it's known as sledging, like when you have all sorts of verbals that go on the pitch. And funnily enough, in lockdown, one of the real educations was getting to hear some of that, like when you were in a stadium that was particularly quiet and you could hear some of the chat that went on. It was fairly entertaining at times. But I do think there are all sorts of elements that go on. But to go back to the original point about him being a cheat, I think I don't think it's a fair accusation at all. And I think you have to be careful about the kind of language that you use.
Going to say you used the word that it's a very strong accusation. It's the strongest accusation you could level at a professional footballer, isn't it? To brand them a cheat, and it's also nonsense as well. Because as you say, this is a man who's flown halfway across the world to come to a league and to show us his undoubted talent. And he's got undoubted talent, but he's made headlines for other reasons off the park. Like you mentioned that a couple of times, picking up litter, rubbing fellow players' knees and injuries when they go down, and taking pictures of his teammates leaving the pitch when he was on the sidelines. You know, he just seems to me to come across as an infectious personality, and I just think he's a nightmare for defenders who are trying to stop him whatever way possible. And I guess he could get under your skin. But, I mean, Larsson was a similar type player. He was a nightmare for defenders, but nobody ever branded Larsson a cheat. You know, I'm just picking that out there because he he was a striker and he scored a lot of goals for Celtic. He's very effective. So I wonder what Kyogo makes of it all, or if he's aware of it at all. Alison, that's the thing that would be. But if he is aware of it, I guess the manager would tell him not to bother his shut with it. Really, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think it probably wouldn't affect him in the slightest. The only thing I would say is that, if he earns a reputation for going down too easily or making a meal of things, I think it does influence people around about you. I think it's maybe worth having a word and just saying, try and... It's a different kind of culture, I think, here at times. I think maybe just try and stay on your feet a bit more, unless you think you're... if you're going down, you think you're winning a penalty or something, I think it's a bit different. But I think maybe just tone down some of it. But I would agree. I think it's too harsh to brand him a cheat. I think he could probably stay on his feet a bit more.
Yes. Now we'll take some comments. That was just myself and Alison outlining a kind of case for the defence of Kyogo. Frank Brennan, morning Frank, regular contributor. Kyogo is not a cheat, but for me, he's gone to ground with what has appeared to be very slight of contact, and as any millennial or Generation Z will tell us oldies, that's modern day football. I guess I'm an oldie then, and Chromatic 24/7. Kyogo's also getting kicked and pulled up and down the park as he knows it's the only way to stop him. There's an element of truth in that, I believe too. So it's and David Bradley comes in. Morning, David. What about the shocking tag and Celtic players? He's facing at one single player. Yeah, that's another thing. And Frank comes in again. Talismanic to join yesterday's hybrid is the word of the day. Is that what we're going to do, Frank? Going to pick out words of the day? Yeah. Michael McDonald says, I love Kyogo, but I like a tougher version of him. An opposing player is going to banjo him. It's not a cheat, simple. A great Glaswegian West Coast word there, Alison. Going to get banjoed. I'm liking that. And Sean Haggerty, well, let's face it, Morella says that all the time. If a player goes down, wins a penalty, a big game and the team wins it, is it cheating or is it a tactical game of chess? I guess that's a fair comment as well. And it's a sign of desperation to use the word cheat. It's defamation. Well, a lot of people on the side of Kyogo there, Alison, which is good to see. Obviously, they would be because they're Celtic supporters. But I think the language in that, you have to be careful, as you say, how you couch that, don't you? Because it's very, very strong and accusatory.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it is a very strong accusation. I think that's a bit extreme to label him a cheat. I think there has been contact. I think what you can see is that he's made the absolute most of any contact that there's been at times, and I think it's fairly easily solved. Just I think maybe a quiet word in his ear about it.
Yep.
I'm not even sure that the manager would deem it necessary to do that, to be honest with you. I think his movement is a real headache for defenders, and not so much just for defenders, but for linesmen too. I think he plays on the shoulder all the time. I think there's been a couple of occasions. I know we've discussed this for a week. In fact, the whole of Scottish football seems to have discussed it for a week about the goal that was given last Thursday night, and I think he probably was offside. But I think there's been a few times this season where he's been flagged off, and I think he's probably been on just because his movement is so quick.
Now, still on Kyogo, a bonus, Alison, because I believe the Japanese international manager, and I'm going to attempt to get his name right, Hajime Moriyasu has handed Celtic a boost by saying that he isn't going to call up players on international duty in January that play for European clubs and out with Japan. He's going to just call up J-League players, which if that's the case, then that would benefit Celtic, especially with Kyogo there, and also if they sign some Japanese players like Maeda and Hitati. He's come out and said that for the January training camp that they're having and games that they're having, he's going to just call up J-League domestic players, which, if true, is a real bonus to Celtic.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you can underestimate how sapping the travelling can be. I think particularly on the back of a month like this one, when there are so many games and then going into the latter half of the campaign, I think it's a bonus to rest players. I think it's to Celtic's benefit. if that's the case. I'm sure if they were called up, I'm sure they'd want to play and they'd want to go, and I think you manage that as best you can. If it happens, I think we all know the sports science and the nutrition that comes into play, and the sleeping at set hours and eating at the same times and drinking to make sure that you try and stay in your same patterns. But I think if it's a case, as it certainly seems to be today, that they're going to get a breather, then I think that respite works well for Celtic and it works well for the players.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's a wee bonus ball for Celtic if that does turn out to be the case. Now, as we spoke about on Monday, and Callum Butcher has been cited, Alison, for that challenge on David Turnbull. It's not surprising, really. I think everybody expected it to happen. But now we have everybody leaping on the bandwagon and saying, oh, he's going to be banned for a game against Rangers. Conspiracy theories abound. But I think the very fact that he's been cited for what was a shocking challenge, at least some form of justice will be served, won't it? Because it was an absolute terrible challenge.
Yeah, I don't think there was any great surprise yesterday when that news broke. I think it was a ridiculous challenge. I think there's a consensus among everyone who's seen it. I don't think there was any ambiguity about it. I think watching it back, it's a dangerous challenge. I think there was no real surprise whatsoever when the news broke yesterday that he's going to be called up to a disciplinary panel. I think it was a red card offence all day long.
Regardless of the punishment, Celtic can't do anything about that now. They still won the game. It didn't have any bearing on the result of the game. So I guess Celtic will just be happy to leave Tannadice with all 3 points, and whatever happens to Callum Butcher happens to Callum Butcher. But also as well that David Turnbull escaped unscathed.
Yeah, and someone referenced it earlier. I think there has been a few meaty challenges this season. I think there has been a couple of pretty physical challenges. I think maybe some of it comes down to the speed with which Celtic play at times. Some challenges, and give the benefit of the doubt here, are clumsy, are mistimed. But I think you have to be careful. I think the duty of a referee really has to be to protect players. I think I think you want to keep the game as safe as possible for players, and I think you have to go back and look at instances like that, and you have to punish it accordingly if you can see that the wrong level of punishment was met out on the day.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can't understand why that was only a yellow card, but we've spoken about that for the past couple of days, and Callum Butcher will now face the SFA beats and get some form of punishment, which is thoroughly merited, because the crime merits that kind of punishment. So, yep, we move on. Alison, Thursday night, Betis, what's your thoughts? We spoke about a kind of hybrid of first-team players and players maybe in need of a game. Have your thoughts changed overnight? Is this a game Celtic need to go hell for leather to win? Or do we just say, okay, let's play a strong team, play a weakened team? Has your thoughts changed on what you were originally thinking?
No. That's a simple answer to that. I would fully expect that you will see a team maybe not entirely made up of fringe players, but I definitely think that there will be an opportunity to rest key players. I think the likes of Callum McGregor, Tom Rodgick, Kyogo, even Joe Hart. I think Celtic's under 21 keeper, England under 21 keepers, very highly rated. I think there's been quite a lot of chat about him and the potential that he has. It might be quite interesting to get a look at him in a game of this magnitude and see how he gets on. I know the manager has said it's not a dead rubber. I'm not sure what else he can say, but I think for us as observers, I think there's so little at stake for it. I know he wouldn't want to come out and suffer a fairly morale sapping heavy defeat. I think you want to keep the momentum going as much as you can, but at the same time, I think you have to see it as part of a bigger picture, and the be all and end all for Celtic this season is winning the league. I think there's no doubt about that, and this month is critical to that. I think they can't afford any other slip up. So I think protecting players, giving them a rest, making sure they're not being overplayed, trying to avoid further injuries is probably more important than finishing the campaign on a win. I think in terms of the financial rewards, I think a win is worth is it just over about 500 grand? Is it 565 or something like that in terms of money? And obviously we know about coefficient points. So I think there are other considerations, but I think by far the biggest one in Ange Postecoglou's mind will be the preparations for the League Cup final and ensuring that Celtic stay on track in terms of league duty.
Simon Thomas was in. Morning, Simon. He says, time to see what the rest of the squad can offer against Betis. That's basically what we've been saying as well, and David Bradley comes in. Morning, David. Tony, give Sorrow his last chance and see him. Ange has done his magic trick. Yeah, I like my Jedi mind tricks when I'm talking about Ange. See if we can turn Sorrow into the player that we think he is. Frank Brennan comes in. Forget the hybrid model for Thursday night. I should know I want to see the field electric completely violent. There's twins reversing instead. Fair enough. And Simon comes back in and says Celtic still have to be competitive about the games about how other players can cope in Europe. So, and guys at HDTC says I see us going all out in the first half. There you go. So we'll see what happens. But we've had our say, and we kind of think that there'll be a full time a team made up of first team players and fringe squad players, Alison, maybe guys like Liam Scales get a shot as well, because I was quite impressed with Liam Scales when he came on, and I've been impressed with the cameos he's played so far, so I think it's right for guys like him to get a wee run out, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think Greg Taylor will probably start too. I think he'll probably feature. He's obviously been out now for the last 3 months or so. I think he'll maybe want to get some game time. I think he'll play Scales as a possibility. I think there's a few others who could come in. I think Beaton could start in the middle of the park. I think James McCarthy could start the game. I think Abada will probably come in and start. So yeah, I do think there will be changes. I think we all know or we all anticipate that it'll be a very different looking side that starts tomorrow night.
John Curry's in agreement with you. Alison, throw Bain in goals, not because he deserves it, because we can't afford Hart to get injured. It's all about protecting players, Alison, isn't it, really? Yeah. And also, I think Celtic's greater priority this week is Motherwell on Sunday. We've said that before.
Yeah, I think we've spoken about it often. I think Celtic are in a position in terms of their league campaign where they can ill afford to drop any more points. So I think it adds an extra layer of pressure to every game that they compete in. I think they know that they have to keep winning games. I think they have to just keep focused on a game-to-game basis of making sure they get into the January window where there can be reinforcements, but they've not lost any further ground. I just don't think realistically that they can afford to slip before then.
Yeah, David Bradley comes in. More of Scales, please. Yep, and CFC 1967 says Juranovic, Wells, Scales, Taylor, Abada, Sora, McCarthy, Beaton, and Mikey Johnson. That's who he wants to play, Alison. That's fair enough. That many's that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, that's 9 players. Hasn't named a goalkeeper. So I want to know who can play in goals. What's that?
Make it exciting.
Yes, indeed. Maybe he's doing that. He's Celtic playing Real Betis with 9 players. That would be fun. Listen, thanks a lot for your comments. We will cover the Betis game in depth tomorrow and see what Ange's thinking after today, because he'll be asked questions about his team in the presser earlier today. And I'm just reading some of the comments here that are coming in. There you go. All right, but thanks for all your contributions. We always appreciate it. We try and read as many out as we can on the show. And have a good day, and thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you all again tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Thanks very much. Cheers, Alison.
Thank you.